All right, I have with me today Scott Ritter. He's a former weapons inspector for the United Nations, also a proud Marine. Scott, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
So today I want to talk about the Russia-Ukraine war. I want to talk about the United States. I also want to talk a little bit about Congress repealing the Iraq war, because I know that you have feelings and thoughts about that war and what we did within that country. But I believe you're familiar with Ray McGovern.
Yes.
He did a nice blurb for your book, and I've had an opportunity to have him on my show. Last week, while speaking with him, he mentioned to me that it is his belief that before the Olympics last year, Putin went to China and basically got permission and the unofficial backing of China to go ahead and launch this special military operation against Ukraine. He believes that China would back them and support them through purchases, but to the media and the world, they would say we're neutral. What are your thoughts? Was China more involved in the pre-war discussion before Putin fired the first bullet?
Well, I believe that China's been a uninvited guest to this conflict from the very beginning. I'll give you an example, and I know Ray will agree with me here because I've heard Ray speak about this often. In June of 2021, when Vladimir Putin and Joe Biden met in Geneva, Switzerland for their summit, when the summit ended, Joe Biden, unprompted, I mean, there was no question. He basically said that he would advise Putin to reconsider his relationship with China, that China's a big country, that their economy is big, and that Russia has much to fear from China, and that Russia should be gravitating towards the West. This shows the mindset that exists in the United States, and it gives away a couple things. One, the total lack of reality that exists in Washington, D.C. about the nature of the Russian-Chinese relationship. Relationships are built in a number of ways, but meaningful relationships are always built upon personal relationships. And when you have a Russian president and a Chinese president who celebrate their birthdays together, they make, I think there's a famous video of them making, pancakes together or dumplings. This is something far more significant than, for instance, the relationship between Barack Obama and Angela Merkel, which was a famously close relationship, except for the fact that Barack Obama ordered the National Security Agency to spy on the cell phone communications of Angela Merkel, exposing the fact that there was no true friendship between the United States and Germany. I can pretty much guarantee that Putin doesn't spy on the communications of Xi, and Xi doesn't spy on the communications of Putin, that this is a personal relationship that's reflective of the fact that Russia and China understand that together they grow stronger. And so this is a relationship that predates the conflict in Ukraine. And the reason why I bring that up is that Putin didn't have to go to Beijing to seek permission. First of all, when you're dealing with communications between national leaders, even leaders that are friendly like Putin and Xi, nothing happens on the spur of the moment. Vladimir Putin simply doesn't get on an airplane and fly to Beijing and throw something on the table that Xi hasn't heard before. And what I'm trying to get at is before that February 4th meeting where they came up with a 5,000-word joint statement, that alone should give away something. You don't craft a 5,000-word joint statement right there on the whim. Okay, bring in the stenographer. We're going to dictate right now. That thing was crafted months in advance and been coordinated closely between the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Russia and the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs so that when the two leaders met, they knew what they were going to say. They knew what was going to happen. So Putin didn't go there to seek permission. Putin went there at the invitation of the Chinese leader to create a joint presence of cooperation. Now, did Putin adjust his timeline based upon Chinese considerations? Absolutely. I think there's no doubt that China made it clear that they would prefer that Russia not initiate a special military operation or an invasion, however you want to call it, before the Olympics ended. And of course, that's what Russia did. They respected that. But that wasn't a decision made in Beijing on February 4th. That was a decision made back when Russia exhausted its diplomatic outcomes back in January, when the United States turned their back on the Russian efforts to have a negotiated settlement, refusing to read and consider the draft treaties Russia put on the table. At that point in time in January is where Russia communicated with China saying, we have no choice. And the Chinese were saying, we understand, but we need timing. But they also said, we're willing, we should get together and put out a joint statement, makes it clear to the world that there is no separation between the two of us, that we're both on this journey together. So I agree with Ray that that this was something that was this is representative of a partnership. I think Ray, I think if Ray was here today, he'd agree with me that this wasn't about Putin seeking permission. This was about a long-standing relationship where an understanding is reached. Remember, this is an alliance. It's not an alliance, first of all. A relationship that's stronger than an alliance. And one of the reasons is, yes, alliances commit you to things, but it's also restraining. Alliances are like a cage. They also limit you. When you don't have an alliance, there's no treaty with words that tell you what you can, your left and right limits. The Russian-Chinese relationship is unlimited. It can go any direction it wants to, as far as it wants to, or as narrow as it wants to, and there's no misinterpreting what's going on because there are no limits. And that's the unique aspect of this relationship.
Okay. Switching gears, Bakhmut, Ukraine continues to be a big story in the media. It continues to be a big deal for Russia and a big deal for Ukraine. Russia is now saying we've taken enough of Bakhmut to confidently say we've conquered the city. One of the top Russian leaders held up the flag, I believe, at the city's capital. Do you believe that Bakhmut has fallen? And if not, what is the next move? What should we expect out of that battle?
Well, I think we can look in history at people counting their eggs before they hatch, so to speak. Ask the Germans, did Stalingrad fall when they only had 100 meters left of beachhead being defended by the Soviets on the western bank? Any general, anybody looking at that would say, well, we've pushed them, we've crushed them, we've got them narrowed in. Stalingrad has fallen. We've taken the administrative building. We're in control. Stalingrad has fallen. Stalingrad hadn't fallen. The Russians held on. They reinforced, etc. So I'm a little hesitant to claim victory before you actually have victory. Look at the Battle of the Bulge. The 101st Airborne was surrounded in Bastogne. The Germans had every reason to believe that they had an airborne division surrounded, defeated, but when the general was asked to surrender, he said nuts. And they held on. Patton relieved them, and the battle went the other way. So again, I don't have a dog in this hunt. It's not like I care one way or the other of the outcome. I think Russia is winning the Battle of Bakhmut. I think Russia has captured the administrative center of Bakhmut. I think psychologically Russia can say that the trajectory is leading towards the decisive defeat of the Ukrainian army in Bakhmut. But the last time I checked, there were Ukrainian soldiers still dug in fighting. So the battle isn't over. And I'm not one to declare victory before you rounded up the last prisoner, killed the last soldier, taken the last building. I think Russia is going to win this battle. But I don't know why they're declaring victory in advance. There's some heavy fighting left. And the problem about declaring victory too soon is that as the fighting continues, people say, wait a minute, I thought you won. I thought you said this battle was over, and yet it continues. So I don't agree with that assessment, but then again, I'm not Russian, and my opinion doesn't matter.
Okay, so too early to call. Okay, because each side is still claiming that they're in control, but Russia kind of officially came out and said, based on us taking the capital, they're seeing that as defeat. But again, the Ukrainian army, they're fighting like warriors. They're still dug in. They're still trying to hold that ground. Colonel McGregor had kind of alluded to the fact that they've got this cauldron where it's basically nearly surrounded, but they're allowing Ukraine to continue to drive people in, almost like a big booby trap, where, if they're going to keep walking soldiers into this battle, they're going to not basically collapse and take the whole city. What are your thoughts on that?
I have the highest regard for Colonel McGregor and his experience and his analytical capabilities, and he's proven to be extraordinarily valuable resource in trying to understand this conflict. But I'd love to sit down with the Colonel over a beer and just say that, look, I can tell you as a Marine, the idea of telling my Marines, take that hill and dig in so the enemy can keep coming into this battle so we keep fighting the battle is the dumbest thing in the world. I'm not calling Colonel McGregor dumb. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that warriors want to close with and destroy their enemy through firepower and maneuver. And if I'm dug in, I need to move forward. I need to fight. I think the Russians haven't closed the cauldron, not because they don't want to close the cauldron. It's because Ukrainians are fighting like cats and dogs to prevent them from closing the cauldron. I just don't understand the notion of, I have yet to see in modern history where an enemy is seeking a double envelopment and then stops. They don't stop willingly. If you're going to seek a double envelopment, if you've suffered all those losses building these arms up, you want them to come together. And the fact that they're not coming together means the Ukrainians are just dumping reserves in there. Now, it's achieving the result that Colonel McGregor speaks of. The end result is the same. The Ukrainians are throwing in resources and they're getting chewed up. There's no doubt about that. But I hesitate to say that that's by design on the part of Russia, because the warrior's instinct isn't to sit there and get shelled. The warrior's instinct, especially an outfit like Wagner, is to get up, move, close with, destroy, and kill. And I just imagine that that's what Wagner's trying to do. And every day you see incremental advances, so they're doing that. It's just the Ukrainians are just fighting hard. They're putting a lot of reinforcements in there. And in the end, I think they're going to be defeated, and the defeat will be catastrophic in nature because of the amount of troops that they poured in. The numbers that they're going to lose when this battle's over are going to be mind-boggling for most people. But I just don't see the Russians sitting back smoking cigars and saying, come on into this trap. I see the Russians fighting, just like the Ukrainians are fighting. But it's proving to be very hard to bring those pincers in.
Okay. Yeah. No, and this is why I like to bring on different guests, because everybody has a little bit of a different perspective to try to help us understand, because we're not there.
We're not there.
Yeah, we're not there, thank goodness. And, we hope that this conflict will end soon. But thank you for the feedback on that.